I wake up every day at the same time. Before the alarm rings, my eyes are already open. It's not urgency, it's habit. I get up slowly so I don't make noise and leave the house the way I like to find it when I return. The sink without dishes, the towel stretched out, the window slightly closed. I drink a glass of water, put on my work pants, check the keys and leave. The street air is still cold. I like it because it clears my head. I walk to the building with a steady pace. The night doorman sees me arriving and gives a short nod. I reply the same way. We don't need to talk much at this hour. I enter through the garage because it's the most direct way to the maintenance room. I turn on the light, put my backpack in the locker and grab the clipboard. It's simple, with sheets held by a big clip. I write everything down there. I don't trust my memory. Today's list includes inspecting the lights on the 5th floor, collecting trash from the odd floors, testing the water pump, cleaning the hall, and replacing the rubber seals on the gate. I put on my gloves and start with whatever gives rhythm to the day. I take the stairs to feel the building calmly. Floor by floor, the same care. The hallway smells of coffee coming from some apartment. On the 5th floor, 2 bulbs are dim. I remove the pieces, clean the sockets and install new ones. I keep the burned-out ones in a separate bag for disposal. I go on collecting the bags from the odd floors. Some residents leave notes taped up. Thank you for keeping the hallway clean. Sorry for the delay. I read, keep them and continue. I go down the service stairs, check the gas system and head to the machine room. I turn on the pump, watch the pressure gauge and write down the result. If there's a variation, I notice. Today it's normal. Still, I stay a few minutes listening to the motor. When the sound is right, the body relaxes naturally. I mark OK on the clipboard and go to the hall. It rained yesterday, and a streak was left near the glass door. I pull the bucket, prepare the mix in the right measure, and drag the squeegee slowly. The sound on the floor is steady. I like it because it shows the work is moving. I finish, dry the edges, and store the materials. It's still early when I start sweeping the sidewalk. An old man who walks every morning passes and greets me. He always points to his wristwatch, as if noting that I arrived on time. I nod and smile slightly. I've worked in the rain with a mild fever, with back pain. If I'm not on my feet, I'm at home lying down to recover. But missing work just because I never learned that. My father was the same way. He worked in maintenance at a school. He used to say that those who take care of collective spaces don't just disappear. I heard that many times without arguing. Today I understand. After the sidewalk, I go back to the garage to replace the gate's rubber seals. I turn off the circuit, leave the maintenance notice and start. I remove the old piece, clean the track, fit the new one. I test the closing. The sound is drier and the gate touches without slamming. Checking that item off the clipboard gives a quiet satisfaction. It's not euphoria. It's the feeling that the right thing was done. I collect the tools, clean my hands and inform the front desk that everything's fine. The morning picks up pace. Residents start leaving. I greet them with a clear, short good morning. Some call me by name. Others just wave. Over time, I've learned to recognize their routines. The woman from the 8th floor walks fast and keeps her car key in hand. The man from the 3rd carries a small backpack and never forgets his umbrella. A couple from the 6th speaks quietly about who will pick up their child. I don't interfere. I hold the door when they're in a hurry and fix the mat when someone drags a cart. I have a box of screws and plugs that I carry in a handcart. Sometimes a simple request comes up. A door scraping the floor, a dripping faucet, a sagging clothesline. Today the woman from the 4th mentioned a noise in the bathroom. I went up with my toolkit. She made space and let me in with my shoes covered. I like being discreet inside other people's homes. I checked the valve, replaced the sealing ring and tightened it properly. The noise stopped. She thanked me with a restrained smile and said it had been like that for days. I replied that when something bothers you every day, it's best to fix it right away. She agreed and walked me to the door. In the elevator, a boy kept looking at the big keychain I wear on my belt. He asked what each key was for. I showed him the ones for the common areas, the gate, the technical rooms. I don't talk about anyone's apartment. He said it looks like a game. I gave a short laugh and changed the subject. I prefer that children don't get interested in electrical panels or machine rooms. Those are places that require care. I returned to the ground floor around 10. I take a walk through the garden. I cut dry leaves, adjust the irrigation timer, and pick up a piece of plastic the wind brought. A new neighbor asks about the recycling collection. I explain the day and time. She thanks me and says she'll sort things better. I like when someone cares about what almost goes unnoticed. The building works because of these small attentions that no one sees at first glance. By late morning, I make a round through the stairs, check handrails, light bulbs, and fire doors. One of them closes too slowly. I grab the Allen key, adjust the hinge, and test it. It closes at the right pace. I note it down to check again during the week. When I go down, I meet the manager in the hall. He asks about the pump. I say it's stable and show him the record. He nods and says a delivery guy may come later with boxes for the party room. I reply that I'll be around to help unload and carry them with the cart. I have lunch in a small corner of the maintenance room. Rice, beans, a piece of chicken, salad. I eat calmly and wash the utensils. I don't like leaving leftovers in the trash. Then I sit for 5 minutes with the door open to let the air circulate. I don't nap during this break. It doesn't do me good to sleep mid-shift. I prefer to stay alert. Sometimes I use the time to rewrite the clipboard neatly. I copy what's pending, cross off what's done, and add what came up. Today I noted for tomorrow the purchase of a new roll of anti-slip tape and the inspection of the garage sensor. Around 2, a resident calls me in the hallway. The service cabinet door is misaligned. I take the level, loosen the screws, adjust the hinge, and align it. The closing fits tight with no gap. He says he'd been putting it off for weeks. I reply that sometimes we postpone things because they seem too small. He nods and goes back to his apartment. I store the tools and continue the round. My day goes on like that with tasks that start and finish. When someone asks why I've never missed a day, I think the answer is simple. I know what happens when a detail is left for later. A cloth forgotten in a bucket starts to smell. A gutter full of leaves clogs and the water comes back. A burned-out bulb gives the impression of neglect. I don't like seeing the place where I work showing signs of abandonment. So I come. Even when the bed asks for more time, I come. Not out of heroism. It's because my job depends on presence. The building relies on it. At the end of the afternoon, before handing over the shift, I review the list. I mark what's pending for the next day. I wash the floor of the maintenance room, turn off unnecessary lights, and check doors and locks. I leave the report on the front desk counter with legible handwriting. The next person knows where I stopped. That avoids confusion. I hand the spare keychain to the doorman, keep mine on my belt, and say, "See you tomorrow." When I leave, people are already coming back home. I see grocery bags, smells of food, quick steps and slow ones, each at their own pace. I walk to the bus stop with the right kind of tired body. It's not exhaustion that breaks you. It's the kind that shows the day was complete. I think about what went well, remember what needs reviewing, and feel calm knowing everything's in place. Tomorrow I'll wake up at the same time. I'll open my eyes before the alarm, put on my work pants, check the keys, and leave. The building will be there. So will I. Part 2. The days that don't change. Some people think it's strange when I say that all my days look the same. But for me, it's the opposite. It's exactly this repetition that gives life meaning. Waking up early, crossing the street while it's still dark, smelling coffee from the bakeries, hearing the first buses passing by. All of that gives me the feeling that the world is starting over again. At work, the routine isn't punishment, it's company. Every little sound has its place. The noise of the gate opening, the click of the main switch, the sound of water hitting the floor. Even the silence between one floor and another has its part. I've worked here for 27 years. I started as a cleaning assistant on the afternoon shift. Back then, I shared the work with another guy, Paolo. He was younger, full of plans. He wanted to save money and open a car wash. One day, he just stopped showing up. The doorman said he went to try his luck in the countryside. I never heard from him again. Around that time, the building manager called me and asked if I wanted to take over the full shift. I accepted without thinking too much. I liked knowing that when people came home, the building would be clean, working, ready to welcome them. Over time, faces changed. New families arrived, children grew up, elderly people moved or passed away. I stayed. I saw renovations, management changes, crises, and parties. I learned the names of those who treated me with respect. And I also learned not to expect anything from those who walked past me as if I were part of the wall. Today that doesn't bother me. Everyone lives at their own pace. Some greet me with a smile, others with their eyes, and some don't notice at all. But there's a difference between not seeing and not wanting to see. Most people are just distracted. In the maintenance room, I have a drawer where I keep old notes. Messages from residents who have already moved out. Thank you for changing the garage light. Thanks for helping with the gate. The toilet works again. You saved the day. There aren't many. But when I open the drawer and see those yellowed papers, I remember that time passes differently for those who take care. The resident comes and goes, but the building stays. I remain as the thread connecting one time to another. It hasn't always been easy to keep the rhythm. There was the winter of 2009 when my mother got sick. She lived alone in a distant neighborhood. I visited every weekend and sometimes in the middle of the night just to check on her. When the doctor said her condition was serious, I thought about taking a leave, but she wouldn't let me. She said work was what kept me whole. I did the full shift, then went to the hospital. I slept standing up, ate whatever I could in the cafeteria, and came back here. It went on for months until the day she passed. When I returned to the building after the funeral, the doorman just looked at me and handed me the key ring. No words were needed. I turned on the lights, picked up the clipboard, and started. That kept me from falling apart. Routine, when truly understood, is a form of care. Some people think it traps you, but to me it's the opposite. It holds things together. Because while everything outside changes, prices, conversations, governments, inside the floor still needs to be cleaned, the gate needs to open and close, the pump needs to work. That's what keeps the world standing, even if no one notices. There's a resident, Mrs. Carmam, who lives on the 9th floor. She's one of the oldest. She always leaves a little thermos of coffee near the front desk. She doesn't say much, but I know it's for me. Once I asked why she did that. She said the smell of coffee in the morning reminded her of her husband, who used to work the same hours I do. Since then, she's never stopped leaving it. It's in these small gestures that I find meaning. I don't need much to feel part of something. The other day, while replacing a circuit breaker, I cut my finger. It was a small cut, but it bled a lot. I bandaged it and kept working. The manager later saw it on the cameras and said I should have gone to the emergency room. I just said everything was under control. I don't like leaving anything halfway done. He shook his head and laughed. Said I must be made of some other material. But it's not that. It's just that to me an interrupted job is an unfinished thought. Over the years I've learned to deal with the building's sounds as if they were familiar voices. When the elevator creaks differently, I already know it needs lubrication. When the gate echoes against the wall, it means the hinge is misaligned. When the hallway smell changes, I notice it before anyone else. It's a kind of intimacy that grows with time. The building speaks if you know how to listen. There are days when the rain doesn't stop and the work doubles. Water tries to come in under the basement door. The wind scatters leaves in the garden. The humidity climbs the walls. I go back and forth, cleaning, draining, drying. When it's over, the relief I feel isn't victory, it's continuity. The building breathes again, and so do I. Some residents have asked what I do on vacation. I say I stay home, taking care of my own things. I wash the walls, fix the roof, redo the grout. They laugh, think it's just a habit. Maybe it is. But the body gets used to doing what it understands, and mine understands work as a way of existing. Standing still makes me restless. I like knowing something depends on my movement, even if it's just a faucet that doesn't drip. Sometimes people ask if I ever wanted to change, to find another place, to do something else. I think about it, but the answer is always the same. Where else would I find the same silence, the same respect for the rhythm of things? Here every task has a beginning, middle, and end, and that's rare in today's world. Out there everything feels urgent and endless. In here every key has its sound, every light its time. It's a kind of peace I've learned to recognize. When the building gets empty in the middle of the afternoon, I like walking through the floors without hurry. The echo of my steps calms me. Sometimes I stop by a window and watch the city moving outside, like a clock that never stops. I think some might see me as part of the structure, someone invisible who keeps everything working. It doesn't bother me. Invisible isn't the one who doesn't exist, it's the one who works in silence. And I like silence. It allows me to notice what others miss in their rush. In all these years, I've seen everything. Couples arguing, doors slamming, loud laughter, rushed moves. I've learned not to judge. Every apartment holds its own world. I just take care of the shell. But sometimes, when I cross paths with someone who looks downcast, I say a stronger good morning. It's not advice, it's a reminder of presence. Because I've learned that sometimes that's what's missing. A simple gesture to remind us that life goes on, even on the same days. And that's why I've never missed a day. Because missing, for me, would be leaving the building alone. And I know what an empty place sounds like. I worked in abandoned buildings before coming here. The echo is different. The air feels heavier. Dust covers the floor in a way that looks sad. I prefer the sound of routine, the smell of fresh disinfectant, the light of new bulbs. I prefer the sound of the gate working. It's the sound of something alive. When the day ends, I go home and almost no one notices I left. And that's fine. Because tomorrow before the sun rises, I'll be back. The same way, at the same time, with the same calmness of someone who understands that the world needs those who keep it standing, even if no one sees. Sunday is the only day when the building breathes slowly. The gate hardly opens, the elevator barely moves. Even so, I come. No one demands it, but I come. I like being here when everything is quiet. No sound of hurried footsteps, no noise of conversations crossing in the hall. It's on these days that I can see the place differently. The floor reflecting the morning light, the garden with still leaves, the smell of wax spreading through the air. Everything seems at peace. It's as if the building gives back what I give it during the week. I always arrive at the same time, even without a clock. The body already knows. I greet the guard on duty, pick up the key ring, and start my rounds. I walk through the ground floor, check if the emergency doors are locked, if the safety lights are on. Then I go up to the rooftop, open the windows to let the air circulate, and stand there looking at the city from above. From so high, things seem calm. The buildings blend on the horizon. The streets are thin lines, the distant sound doesn't bother. I think maybe the world out there isn't as chaotic as it seems. Maybe we just live too fast to notice. Sunday is also the day for small repairs. I do what I've noted during the week. Replace a loose switch, clean the pump filter, check the hinges, lubricate the locks. I like this kind of work. It's not urgent, but it's necessary. It requires attention, not haste. When I finish each task, I stop for a moment. I listen to the sound of the space. If everything is silent, I know I did it right. Silence is the sign that things are in order. Sometimes the building manager shows up. He always carries the newspaper folded under his arm and a cup of coffee. He stays with me for a few minutes, asks if everything's fine, comments on some news, then leaves. We understand each other with a look. No need for many words. He knows the building is in good hands, and I know he trusts me. That trust is worth more than any compliment. Today, for example, he mentioned that many buildings struggle to keep employees for long. He said most don't stay more than 2 or 3 years. I listened and said that everyone has their own way. For me, time doesn't weigh when there's purpose. Work, when it becomes part of life, stops being an obligation. He looked at me and smiled. Said I should write a book. I laughed and changed the subject. I never thought about telling my story. I've always believed there's nothing extraordinary to say. But sometimes I think the simple things also have value. They just need to be seen up close. There are days when the Sunday silence makes me remember old things. The time when I started here, with the uniform still too big and my hands unsure. I remember the first Christmas I spent on duty. The empty building, blinking lights, and me sweeping the hall to chase away the loneliness. That night, the woman from the 7th floor came down with a plate of sweet bread and left it on the desk. She said she didn't want me to spend the night without something sweet. It was a simple gesture, but it stayed in my memory. The taste of that dessert still returns whenever the smell of cinnamon appears in December. These memories help me understand how time shapes us. At first I worked to prove I was responsible. Today I work because I've found peace in what I do. I've learned that constancy has strength. That being someone others can rely on is more important than seeming important. Constancy creates roots, and roots give meaning. Late in the morning, while cleaning the stairs, I found a small toy, a red car, probably from some child who passed by in a hurry. I kept it at the front desk. Later, the mother came looking for it. When I handed it to her, she thanked me as if it was something precious. She said her son cried all night because of that car. I smiled and said it was all right. She replied that she never forgets gestures like that, and I kept thinking about how what seems small to some can be huge to others. After lunch, the sun comes through the glass facade and leaves golden patches on the floor. I like watching the reflection move slowly as the afternoon passes. Sometimes I sit for a while on the garden bench just to watch life go by. Birds on the wire, children playing on the sidewalk, a dog sleeping in the shade. Nothing extraordinary happens, but it's the kind of scene that soothes. Ordinary life has a beauty that hurry never sees. I've heard some residents say they don't understand how I can stand doing the same thing for so long. I just answer that the secret is in seeing the detail. Every day brings a small difference. A new smell, a different light, a brief conversation. That's how time passes without feeling heavy. Because work, when done with attention, stops being routine and becomes a way of being present. Every now and then, someone calls me on the intercom to help with something outside hours. I go without complaint. Not because it's my duty, but because I like knowing I can fix things. Last week, a resident called because her shower broke in the middle of her bath. I went up quickly, turned off the circuit breaker, replaced the heating coil and left it working. When I finished, she said she didn't know what she'd do if I weren't there. I stayed quiet, just nodded. I don't need to hear thanks. The sound of the water running again is enough. In the late afternoon, when the sun begins to fade, I like walking through the building one last time. It's an old habit. I watch the lights turning on, the reflection of dusk on the windows, the clean hallways. Every closed door has a story behind it. I think of people having dinner, laughing, resting. Everything seems in its place. And that's the feeling I take with me on my way home. The certainty that the day served a purpose, even if no one saw it. Sometimes when I get home, I put the uniform in the wash and watch the fabric sway on the clothesline. I think about how many days it's been with me, how many times that pocket carried the same keys, how many times the same hands repeated the same gestures. And I realize there's a quiet beauty in repetition. Repetition isn't lack of choice. It's a choice in itself. Choosing to stay is just as brave as choosing to leave. I go to bed early as always, the body tired but light. Before sleeping, I listen to the distant sound of the street. Cars passing, dogs barking. I close my eyes and remember the empty building, the smell of cleanliness, the silence of Sunday. And I think that tomorrow, everything starts again. The lights, the footsteps, the voices, the requests, the small repairs. Life just as it is. And I'll be there at the same time with the same keys, ready to care for whatever time leaves in my hands. Because in the end, that's what keeps me whole. The constancy of being present even when no one notices. The building sleeps peacefully because someone stayed standing. And that for me is enough. In recent years, I've started to feel time differently. Before, the days passed like a straight line. Now I feel that each morning leaves a mark. The body warns before the mind does. My knee complains when I take the stairs too quickly. My shoulder pops when I lift the water bucket. My eyes tire faster when I spend too long looking at the light from the lamps. It's not that I'm weak, just more aware of what the body can handle. And maybe that's what time does. It teaches you to measure strength not by how much effort you make, but by the calmness of knowing when to stop. Even so, I can't imagine a day away from the building. I've thought about taking a break, resting a little, but the idea makes me restless. I wouldn't know what to do with so much silence. I'm used to the sounds here. The click of the key, the broom's scrape, the intercom's beep, the doorman's chatter. They're familiar voices, part of my routine. When one is missing, it feels like something's off. It's strange to admit, but the building has become a kind of home. And maybe deep down I've never belonged to a place as much as I do to this one. I remember when the new manager arrived, 2 years ago. He's young, full of energy and ideas. He wanted to change a lot right away. Installed motion sensors, new cameras, hired a gardening company, replaced the garage floor. I didn't complain. I just watched. At first he called me Mr. Nelson, with that polite kind of distance. After a while he started calling me Nelsinho, said it was out of affection. I laughed and let it go. Little by little we built trust. He learned that not everything needs replacing. Some things just need maintenance. Once he wanted to understand why I wrote everything down on a paper clipboard. I showed him the old sheets, dated, with notes on every detail of the building. I told him I like seeing what's already been done, Knowing that the same gate has been fixed 10 times but still works gives me a kind of satisfaction no digital report could ever give. He looked closely and said he understood. I think that was the day he realized what I do isn't just work, it's memory. Every mark, every note is a piece of time kept safe. Last winter, I caught a bad cold that lasted nearly 2 weeks. It was the first time in many years I thought about missing a day. I woke up tired, weak, throat sore. But still I came. One of the doormen insisted I should go home. Said that if I collapsed there, the building wouldn't move forward. I laughed and told him I was used to it. Deep down, he was right. But I couldn't lie down knowing the lights on the 3rd floor were still burned out. I stayed until I fixed them. Only then did I leave a little early. The next day I came back feeling better. Not out of stubbornness, but out of the need to be where I know who I am. Over time I've learned that the body is like the building. It needs constant maintenance. Ignore a small noise and it grows louder. Leave a small leak and it turns into a crack. The difference is that the body has no spare parts. So I started taking better care. I take my medicine on time, stretch before starting the shift, drink more water. Age doesn't change the love for what I do. It just forces me to do it more carefully. On the days when my back pain gets stronger, I slow down. I walk more slowly, pause between floors, take a deep breath. In those moments, I notice that the building breathes with me. The sounds become clearer, the wind through the windows, the creak of the floor, the faint hum of the light. It's as if time stops a little so I can listen. What's changed the most over the years isn't the work, but the people. The new residents are different. They talk less, live faster, always with a phone in their hands. Sometimes they walk past without noticing me. Other times, they send messages asking for help instead of calling me by name. I don't judge. It's their time's way of being. But I miss the short talks from before, when someone would stop to share a piece of news or ask if I'd had lunch yet. Today, almost everything is urgent and distant at the same time. Even so, some still keep the old habits. Mrs. Carmam, for example, still makes Sunday coffee. The other day, she called me to change a light bulb in her kitchen. When I finished, she offered me a cheese bread and we sat for a while. We talked about the weather, the new neighbors, her husband, and gone for more than 20 years now. She said loneliness feels lighter when the day has routine. I agreed. I stayed there for a few minutes, silent, watching the steam rise from the coffee. It was one of the few moments I realized I'm not the only one who finds peace in repetition. There's also the boy from the 3rd floor, Miguel. He likes to talk. Says he wants to be an engineer to understand how everything works. He's always asking questions. He already knows the difference between a circuit breaker and a fuse, how the water pump works, and even helped me paint a wall in the storage room. Sometimes I think he's the first person who really notices what I do. When he talks about the future, his eyes shine, and I listen like someone hearing an old song. He represents what I once was. Curious, not yet knowing that time will turn that curiosity into routine. These small connections are what hold me. Every gesture, every conversation, every attentive glance, they remind me that what I do isn't just keeping the building clean or organized. It's making sure other people's lives move at the right pace, without stumbles, without surprises. Routine is what sustains everything that seems natural. The other day, a resident asked me how many days I've worked here. I thought about it. I've never counted, but if I do the math, it's more than 9,000 days. 9,000 mornings crossing the street, unlocking the gate, starting the shift. 9,000 nights turning off the lights and locking the padlock before going home. Saying that number out loud sounds too big, but to me each of those days was just one more step. That's how life is built, one day at a time, steady, constant, until it becomes part of who you are. Sometimes I wonder how long I'll be able to keep the rhythm. I don't have an answer. I only know that as long as my body allows it, I'll be here. And when the day comes that I can't anymore, I hope to leave the same way I arrived, in silence, without fuss, with everything in its place. I want to leave the building working, without anything missing. On the coldest nights when the city sleeps and only the wind makes noise, I like to stop by the gate before leaving. I rest my hand on the cold iron and feel the weight of the day leaving with me. The building stays quiet but not empty. The lights on, the garden watered, the floor clean. It's my way of saying goodnight, even if no one hears. Time, when you look closely, is made of repetitions, and it's in them that I've learned to find meaning. I've lived long enough to understand that a man's worth isn't in what he achieves, but in what he sustains. And I've sustained this building, brick by brick, gesture by gesture, day after day. That's enough for me. Maybe time weighs heavier now, but it's a weight I carry with care, because it's also given me something in return, the certainty that every small effort left a mark. And when I run my hand over the walls, when I hear the sound of the gate closing, I know that a part of me stayed there, steady, discreet, invisible, but present. It had been 32 years without a single day away from work, not even when the flu hit hard, not even when my body asked for rest. But every cycle has a pause, even when we don't want to see it. Mine came suddenly without warning on an ordinary Monday morning. I woke up at the same time as always before sunrise. My body felt normal. I made coffee, put on my uniform, checked the key ring. Everything in place. But when I climbed the first staircase of the building, I felt a quick dizziness as if the floor had tilted. I rested my hand on the railing and waited for it to pass. The air felt heavy. I took a deep breath and kept going. I thought it was just accumulated fatigue. At 8 o'clock, my vision blurred. I stood still for a few seconds, trying to focus on the clock on the wall. Then everything went back to normal. I did what I always do. I ignored it. At lunchtime, the manager noticed I looked pale and asked if I was okay. I said yes. He insisted I see a doctor, said he'd drive me himself. I laughed, as always, saying it would pass. But in the afternoon, while sweeping the 5th floor hallway, I felt my body lose strength. I dropped the mop and sat down on the floor. My heart was beating out of rhythm, my hands cold and sweaty. A resident found me like that, half dizzy, and called for help. The next thing I knew, I was in an ambulance, the siren mixing with the noise of the street. At the hospital, they said it was the beginning of a heart attack. I stayed there for 5 days. 5 days away from the building. Away from the sound of doors, away from the smell of cleaning products, away from my own world. The hospital room was too quiet. I stared at the white ceiling and thought about the hallway lights, the garden that needed watering, the list I'd left unfinished. It felt like time had stopped. On the 3rd day, the manager came by. He brought an envelope with notes from the residents. Some handwritten, others typed and printed. "Get well soon, Mr. Nelson. The building isn't the same without you. Come back soon." I read each one slowly. I never imagined that so many people noticed me. For so many years, I thought my work went unseen. In that moment, I understood that a silent presence is also remembered. It just doesn't need to be announced. When I got home, the doctor recommended rest, told me to avoid effort for at least 15 days. I obeyed, more or less. On the 2nd day at home, I was already up tidying the table. In the bedroom, the clock marked time too slowly. The absence of the gate sound bothered me. I tried reading, watching TV, walking around the yard, but my body felt restless, as if part of me was still in the building. After a week, the manager came to visit. He brought the newspaper, a thermos of coffee, and told me the updates. The new gate working perfectly, the garden cared for by the landscapers, all the lights in order. He said the maintenance boys had organized themselves to follow the list I left. I felt relieved and at the same time empty. It's strange to see the world go on without you. He noticed my silence and said, "The building misses you, but it's learning to stand on its own." I smiled, half embarrassed. During those days at home, I started thinking about everything I'd lived there. I remembered my first day on the job, the new uniform, the insecurity, the faces that had come and gone. I thought about the nights I spent fixing the water pump, so no one would wake up without hot water. The times I climbed stairs with heavy bags just to help someone who hadn't asked. The rainy mornings spent mopping the floors to prevent accidents. I remembered how small it all seemed, and how essential. By the 2nd week, I started to recover. My blood pressure stabilized. My body found its rhythm again. The doctor said I needed to change my lifestyle, take better care of myself, sleep more, eat slower. I promised, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. It's not simple to change a habit built over more than 30 years. When I was finally cleared, the first thing I did was walk to the building. I didn't go in, and I stayed across the street watching. The gate opened and closed. The gardener watered the plants. The doormen talked in the booth. Everything in order. I stood there for a few minutes just looking. It felt like the building was breathing on its own. I felt a strange pride mixed with longing. I had helped build that peace. The next day I returned officially. The manager was waiting for me at the front desk. Told me to take it easy. I agreed. I went in, greeted my co-workers, touched the gate like greeting an old friend. The sound of the iron, the smell of cleaning products, the echo of the hallway, all the same. Only I was a little different. After coming back, I learned to do the same work with new eyes. I started paying more attention to myself. I stopped to drink water, rest between tasks, listen to my body before pushing through. At first, it was hard to accept this new pace. I felt guilty when I paused. But soon I realized that taking care of myself was also taking care of the building. If I wasn't well, nothing else would be either. The residents began treating me with more kindness. Some asked about my health. Others left fruit or coffee at the front desk. Little Miguel drew a picture of me, with the key ring hanging from my belt, and gave it to me saying I was the heart of the building. I folded the paper and placed it in the drawer where I keep the old notes. Sometimes I open it just to look. After that scare, I realized that the time I've spent there wasn't just work. It was life happening in silence. Every floor, every bulb, every door adjusted holds a piece of me. And if one day I'm no longer there, I want the building to keep standing, steady, clean, bright. I want people to come and go without noticing how much a place depends on invisible care. Today, when I finish my shift, I look at the clock without hurry. I don't rush to leave. I walk slowly to the gate, look at the garden, listen to the city's noise, and I understand that life is made of these simple sounds. The creak of a hinge, the soft closing of a door, the wind passing through the windows. All of it reminds me that I'm still here. Maybe one day I'll retire. Maybe my body will decide before I do. But as long as I can, I'll be present. Not out of obligation, but by choice. Because taking care of what others don't see is what makes me feel part of something. And if one day someone asks me what I've learned after all these years without missing a day, I'll say that presence, when it's true, continues even when we're absent. The building survived my absence. But during that pause, I discovered something I'd never stopped to think about. That sometimes you have to stop to see how much you've really lived. That routine is also love, just spoken in silence, in the rhythm of hands that keep working, even when the body asks for rest. Since that day, every sunrise has meant something new. Waking up, putting on the uniform and crossing the street is no longer just the start of a shift. It's a reminder that I'm still here, whole, aware, and at peace with what I've built. The building is still alive, and somehow so am I. Time moves slowly when you're inside it, but when you look back, you realize it all piled up in silence. The other day, the manager called me into the meeting room and said the building was turning 40. He said they wanted to organize a simple celebration. Cake, old photos, and a short speech to thank the longest-serving employees. I listened quietly, saying nothing. When he finished, he asked if I would say a few words. I stood speechless for a moment. I've never been good at speaking. I've spent my life observing, not making speeches. But he insisted, said I was part of the building's history, that no one knew it as well as I did. That night at home, I kept thinking about what I could say. There isn't much you can fit into a few sentences. How do you explain over 30 years of routine without sounding repetitive? How do you translate what it means to be remembered for things no one notices? I kept recalling the early days, the rusty gate, peeling paint, elevators that jammed, the smell of fresh paint mixed with mold. I remember the first manager, a serious man who wore a suit even on Saturdays. I remember the doormen who are gone now, the residents who grew old, the children who now have children of their own. It's strange to realize I've spent more time here than anywhere else in my life. The following week, preparations began. They hung banners in the hall, cleaned the exterior windows, planted new flowers. I helped as usual, but this time every task carried a different weight. It wasn't just maintenance, it was memory. As I swept the floor, I saw reflections of people who were no longer there. Mrs. Carmam, with her daily coffee, has moved away to live with her daughter. Little Miguel is now a teenager. Sometimes he greets me in a hurry, headphones on without stopping to talk. Life went on and I remained, the thread tying one chapter of the story to the next. On the day of the celebration, I arrived early. The manager told me to relax, but I can't stay still when there's work to do. I adjusted the tables, straightened the tablecloth, tested the sound system. When the residents started coming down, I felt a strange nervousness. as if it were the first time they were truly seeing me. Greetings, smiles, pats on the shoulder. One longtime resident said she remembered me carrying her moving boxes when she arrived almost 20 years ago. Another said she didn't realize I was still on the same shift, thought I had already retired. I answered lightly, I like constancy. When they called my name to speak, the room fell silent. I took the microphone carefully. My hands were sweating, but my voice came out simple as always. I said that in all these years I had never felt alone here, that the building was like a second home, and that each person who passed through left a piece of themselves behind. I said I never showed up every day out of pride, but out of affection, because I learned from my father that those who care for a place also care for the people who depend on it. And I finished by saying that if one day I'm no longer here, I hope they keep taking care, not for me, but for what this place represents. Soft, sincere applause. A few eyes filled with tears. The manager hugged me and said that kind of speech isn't heard anymore. I smiled and thought he was probably right. Everything today is fast, brief, disposable. Speaking about constancy sounds old-fashioned, but it's what holds the world together. After the celebration, the building smelled of cake and cleaning products. I stayed late, putting away chairs, collecting cups, turning off the lights. When I finished, I sat for a moment in the empty lobby. I looked at the clock. It was almost midnight. The shift was over, but I didn't feel like going home. It felt like I needed to say goodbye to that moment. The silence of the night brought a different kind of peace, quiet gratitude without words. In the days that followed, I noticed something curious. More residents started greeting me. Some stopped to talk a bit. A new neighbor asked how long I'd worked there, and when she heard the answer, she said it was beautiful to see someone stay so long in one place. I thanked her and thought that staying is harder than arriving. Everyone arrives. Staying takes patience, habit, and care. Not long after, I received an envelope at the front desk. Inside was a handwritten letter from Mrs. Carmim. She said she was living with her daughter now, that she missed the building, the garden, and the shared coffee. At the end, she wrote, "Thank you for keeping the world as it should be, clean, steady, and quiet." I folded the letter and placed it in the same drawer with the old notes. There are so many now that the drawer barely closes. Sometimes I think that drawer is my biography. As the months went by, I slowed my pace. The doctor told me to avoid heavy work. I started sharing some tasks with the younger ones. At first, it was hard to accept help, but then I understood that what I had to teach wasn't just technique, it was attitude. To show that real care isn't about speed, it's about presence. To teach that fixing something isn't just replacing a part, it's restoring balance. One of the new guys, Raphael, started working with me. He's in his 20s, strong, eager to learn. He asks everything, observes everything. He reminds me of myself at the beginning. The other day, while we were adjusting a hinge, he said, "One day I want to be like you." I laughed and said all he needed was to be consistent. He went quiet, thinking. I think he understood. These days I no longer climb all the floors like before. I stay mostly on the ground floor, reviewing lists, guiding, observing. At the end of the day, I still make a point of walking around. I wipe something here, adjust a bulb there, pick up a forgotten paper. Small gestures, almost automatic but full of meaning. Sometimes I imagine the building without me, not with sadness but with curiosity. It will go on, of course. Others will come. Other hands will care for it, other eyes will notice what I used to see. But there's something no one can replace. The time I lived here. No one can repeat that. When time passes through a place along with you, it leaves invisible roots. When I arrive in the morning and see the sun reflecting on the glass facade, I feel the same calm I felt on the first day. I think about everything that has changed. The residents, the managers, the equipment, the rules, and realize that what remains is the same. Care. Care is the true foundation of everything. I don't know if I'll still be here for the building's next anniversary. My body moves slower now, my eyes tire easily, but I know that as long as I can, I'll keep opening the gate every morning, checking the lights, listening to the hum of the pump, writing everything down on the clipboard. Because in the end, that's what I know how to do. And maybe that's what I am. The building has aged and so have I. But there's harmony in growing old together. When I run my hand along the wall and feel the smooth paint, I know I'm also touching the decades that have passed. And I realize that time, contrary to what people say, doesn't take everything away. It preserves what's done with care. There comes a moment when you realize the body no longer keeps up with the will. It took me a while to admit it. I spent months pretending it was just fatigue, that a good night's sleep would fix it. But lately, climbing a flight of stairs left me out of breath, and my knee clicked with every step. The doctor was direct. "Mr. Nelson, you need to stop." I stayed silent. I didn't know what to say. Stopping for me had always meant failing to show up, and I never failed to show up. That day I went home with a full mind. I sat on the porch, looked at the sky, and thought about everything that building had meant. It was more than work. It was an extension of me. Every clean floor, every key, every replaced bulb, all carried my mark even if no one saw it. The thought of not being there the next morning left me with an emptiness too big for words. The next morning I put on my uniform as usual. My body ached, but the gesture was automatic. I walked to the building with the same steady pace as every day. The doorman looked surprised. "I thought you were staying home," he said. I told him I just came to tidy up a few things. He understood even without me explaining. I entered through the garage, ran my hand along the walls, listened to the sound of the gate closing behind me. It felt like hearing the echo of my own story. I picked up the clipboard but didn't write anything. The blank pages seemed to look back at me. I sat in the maintenance room for a while, just listening to the machines, the pump motor, the hum of the light, the wind passing through the cracks. It was a silence full of memories. In that room I could see, without having to remember, the first day, the first tasks, the first compliment, the first mistake. Everything was still there, mixed with the smell of grease and disinfectant. I went up to the rooftop. The city stretched below, the sun rising slowly, painting the buildings orange. The view was the same as always, but it felt new. I thought about how many times I had seen that sunrise without really noticing. How many times I'd been too busy to look at the sky. Now, with a calm heart and a tired body, I saw it differently. The routine that once felt like habit now felt like farewell. While I watched, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Raphael, the young maintenance guy. He carried the key ring I used to wear on my belt. "The manager asked me to bring it for you to sign the shift transfer," he said. I took the key ring, heavy, familiar. The keys jingled in my hand. Each one had a different sound, a different story. The gate key, worn and cold. The machine room key, stiff to turn. The storage key with the red tape I tied myself. I held them for a while without rushing. Then I handed them back. "They're yours now," I said. He hesitated, but took them. We went down together. On the way, I pointed out the details no one notices. The exact spot where the floor gets slippery when it's damp. The sound difference between a bulb about to burn out and a new one. The right way to align the gate so it doesn't slam with the wind. He listened closely, memorizing everything. In the end, he said, "Don't worry, Mr. Nelson, I've got it." And I believed him. The manager was waiting for me in the lobby. He said they had prepared a small tribute. I tried to refuse, but it was too late. The residents were gathered, some holding flowers, others with handmade signs. "Thank you, Mr. Nelson," one read, written in a child's handwriting, probably Miguel's son. I stood still, unsure what to do with so much attention. The manager gave a short speech, talked about dedication, patience, constancy. When he finished, he handed me a simple plaque with my name and hiring date. Below it, a line read, "3 decades of invisible care." I held the plaque and looked around. Familiar faces, new ones, all smiling. That moment was the opposite of everything I'd lived there. Noisy, crowded, visible. Yet somehow it felt right. Because even though I never sought recognition, it was good to know someone had noticed. After the tribute, I stayed a little longer. I walked through the building like someone reviewing a dream. I ran my hand along the railing, touched the mirror in the hall, rested my palm on the garden wall. Every corner held a memory. The gate that once jammed in the rain. The pump I fixed at dawn so no one would wake up without water. The 5th floor hallway where I fainted. Everything looked back at me. Before leaving, I stopped at the front desk. The doorman handed me the logbook to sign one last time. I wrote slowly with a steady hand. Shift ended at 6 p.m., everything in order. I closed the book and left the pen on top. I looked at the clock, then at the gate. The sun was already setting, turning the floor gold. Raphael appeared, a little shy, saying he'd walk me to the sidewalk. We walked side by side in silence. When I reached the street, I turned around and looked at the building one last time as an employee. The windows reflected the evening light. The garden was green, the gate moved gently. "Everything was at peace. Will you miss it?" he asked. I thought before answering. "I don't know if it's missing it. I think it's longing to see the world working in silence." He smiled. "I did too. I took the 6:30 bus, the same one as always. Sat by the window, my body tired but light. As the bus rolled on, I thought life is a lot like that building. We spend years making sure everything runs right, and when we leave, what remains isn't our name. It's the care. At home, I took off the uniform and hung it on the hanger, the fabric worn, the pocket marked from the keys. I washed my hands slowly, feeling the rough skin, the smell of soap. I sat on the porch chair, listened to the distant hum of the city, and for the first time in many years I didn't have to think about tomorrow. The gate would be in someone else's hands. The building would keep breathing. I stayed there until the sky darkened. I remembered my father, and the phrase he used to say when I was a boy, "Those who take care properly never really leave." I understood now what he meant, the invisible mark that care leaves behind. The same one I left there. When I went inside to sleep, I felt a peace I had never felt before. It wasn't the end. It was simply time to rest. The building would stay standing. Raphael would take care, and somehow I'd still be there. In the shine of the floor, in the sound of the gate, in the coffee left at the front desk. Everything I did remained in the silence of things, and for the first time I realized that silence is also a form of presence. Since the last shift, my routine has changed in ways I'm still learning to accept. I wake up at the same time as always, but now there's no reason to rush. My body wakes up on autopilot, as if the building were still waiting for me. I lie there for a few minutes, listening to the silence of the house. It's a different silence from the one in the maintenance room. Here there are no motors, no broom sweeping, no echo of keys. It's a silence that gives thoughts back to you. I get up, make coffee, and open the window. The street is the same, the movement familiar, but time seems to move slower. The bus I used to take passes by at 6:40 sharp, and sometimes I watch it go, wondering who's inside. I imagine the doorman opening the gate, Raphael checking the lights, the manager already making calls to solve some detail. It's strange to realize that the world keeps turning without you, as if nothing had changed, and yet everything has. The first days of retirement were the strangest. My body felt light and my mind heavy. I didn't know what to do with so many free hours. I tried sleeping in, but sleep wouldn't come. I woke up before sunrise, as always. I walked around the house, rummaged through drawers, washed the same plate twice. It felt as if the routine that once held me up had been left orphaned. I started walking through the neighborhood in the mornings. I passed by the still damp sidewalks, watched people heading to work, gates opening, the smell of fresh bread coming from the bakeries. It's the same scene I lived for years, only now from the outside. Sometimes I run into someone from the building. A resident recognizes me, waves, asks how I'm doing. I say I'm fine, and it's true, at least partly. They tell me the building looks good, that Raphael is doing well, that the garden bloomed after the rain. I listen carefully, like someone hearing news about a distant relative. I went back there once during the first month. I passed by casually just to look. The doorman recognized me from afar and opened the gate before I could even ask. I went in, greeted Raphael, who was replacing a light bulb. He looked more confident, calm, the way of someone who's learned to listen to the sounds of a place. I watched without interfering. When he finished, he asked if it looked good. I said yes, that it looked better than before. And it was true. I was happy to see the building alive, working, breathing on its own. The visit didn't last long. I walked through the halls, touched the walls, smelled the familiar scent of disinfectant. Everything was the same and yet different. The plants had grown, the lights shone brighter, the gate moved silently. At the front desk, the manager came to greet me. He said they missed seeing me every day, asked if I'd like to come by more often. I said yes, but deep down I knew I couldn't come too much. There are places we must let live without our shadow. I left through the same door as always, but this time I looked back. The building seemed taller, fuller of life. The afternoon light hit the windows, reflecting the orange sky. I stood there for a moment, keeping the image as if it were a photograph, and I understood that the place was now part of me in a different way, not as work, but as memory. At home, I built new rituals. I care for the plants in the yard, sweep the sidewalk, organize my tools. It's a piece of what I used to do, just on a smaller scale. Sometimes Raphael calls to ask for advice about a repair. Talks about the pump's noise, a small leak, a flickering bulb. I listen and guide him, but without interfering too much. He needs to find his own way. I just tell him that when the sound feels right, the building will let him know. He laughs, and I can tell he understands. On Sundays, I make coffee and sit on the porch. Mrs. Carmer messages me sometimes, tells me about her daughter, her grandkids, her new apartment. Says she still misses the smell of cleaning products and the sound of the gate opening in the morning. I reply that I miss it too. When it's calm, longing becomes a kind of company. The other day, Miguel, now almost grown, came to visit. He said he's studying electrical engineering and chose that path because of me. He brought the same old drawing he'd made of me, now framed. Said he wanted to return it as a gift. I was speechless. In that frame, I didn't see a portrait. I saw the reflection of everything I'd tried to teach without words. I gave him my old keyring, the first one I ever used, kept at home as a keepsake. I told him the keys don't open anything anymore, but they still carry the sound of what was once cared for. He smiled and promised not to lose them. Over time, I learned that life outside the building also has its own sounds, just different ones. The birds replace the hum of the pump. The wind through the trees takes the place of the buzzing lights. The neighbor sweeping her sidewalk feels like a distant echo of my own work. I realize that care doesn't need a badge. It just changes places. Sometimes at night, I dream I'm still there. In the dream, it's always morning. The gate opens slowly. The hall is clean, and I walk with the clipboard in hand. No faces appear, but I feel everyone's presence. I wake up with a calm heart. It's not nostalgia, it's recognition, as if the building visits me back, just to say everything's still all right. Retirement taught me that time doesn't erase what's done with attention. The building stands firm, and I stand with it, even from afar. There's an invisible line that connects those who care to what they've cared for. It's not a bond of ownership, but of belonging. Now, when the sun rises, I no longer put on the uniform, but I still feel the same impulse to open a door, make sure something's in order, sweep away what the wind brought. It's the same gesture, just in another place. And in a way, it's as if the building still exists within me. Sometimes I think about going back, just to look once more. Maybe one day I will, when my body asks to see what was left behind. But for now, it's enough to know the gate opens on time. The garden is green and the hum of the motor remains clean. It's enough to know that the care continues, and that what's done with truth is never lost. In the end, I think there's no real ending for those who've spent their lives keeping things standing. There's only a quieter kind of time, one where the world gives back the silence you once gave it. And in that silence, I find peace. Because even from afar, I still feel what I always felt when closing the gate at the end of the day, the certainty that everything is in order. Time has passed, and now the building lives in my memory mixed with sound. Sometimes when I'm home and hear the wind hitting the window, it feels like the same sound of those doors closing. Memory does that. It keeps the simplest noises as if they were beloved voices. It's been a few years since the last shift, but I still wake before sunrise. My body has forgotten how to sleep in. The difference now is that there's no clock waiting, no gate to unlock. Only habit, stuck to the soul like an old scent. Over the months, I've learned to live with what I call a full silence. It's the kind that doesn't hurt, but doesn't go away either. A space where memories live without needing to be spoken. In the beginning, I tried to fill that silence, made up chores, washed the same yard twice, fixed what wasn't broken. Now I just let it exist. Silence is also a way of staying present. Sometimes I catch myself remembering faces. Some I still see on the streets, older, hurried, but recognizable. Others have faded with time. The manager moved to another state. Raphael now oversees the entire team, and young Miguel has become an engineer. Every now and then he calls me, says he works in building maintenance, and that every time he walks into a new place he remembers me. I stay quiet, listening with a warm chest. It's a good feeling to see that something that began so simply became someone else's reference. Mrs. Carmen, I was told, passed away a little over a year ago. The news came from a neighbor. I stood still for a long while, not sure what to feel. I remembered the coffee she left at the front desk, her soft-spoken way, the calm she carried. It's strange when someone like that goes. It's as if the world loses a background sound, something small but essential. That day I made coffee the same way she used to, and left a little in the saucer, as if she might still appear. Sometimes I visit the building. I don't always go inside. I like standing across the street just watching. The windows still shine, the garden's still green. The gate, the same one I adjusted countless times, now moves smoothly, almost without noise. Sometimes a new resident walks by, unaware that I spent half my life taking care of that place. It doesn't bother me. Real care doesn't need a name. Not long ago, Raphael called to say the condo was going through a major renovation. He asked if I wanted to take a look at the plans before they started. I went, walked in with a visitor badge, smelling fresh paint, hearing the tools, feeling life in motion. The building seemed new, but the structure was the same. I walked down the halls and realized that even with all the changes, its essence remained, as if time had remodeled things without erasing the marks. When I reached the maintenance room, I saw my old clipboard hanging on the wall. Raphael had framed it. Below it a small plaque read, "Here began the silence that cares." I had no words. I touched the glass slowly and felt the years move beneath my fingertips. Everything I had lived fit into that single gesture. I left with a feeling that mixed longing and gratitude, because I realized the building had taken the right path. It stayed alive, useful, in good hands, and I had too, slower but whole. Today I understand that the work wasn't just what I did, it was the way I existed, and that the care I gave to the building found its way back to me, like a reflection. In the neighborhood, people call me Mr. Nelson from the big building. When someone needs help, they knock on my gate. I ask them to come in slowly, look at the dripping faucet, the stuck gate, and fix it the same way I always did. I don't charge anything. I just like seeing things work. It's a habit that became part of who I am. Mornings are still my favorite time. I sit on the porch with my coffee and let the day rise slowly. The sun touching the walls, the sound of hurried footsteps, the barking dogs. It's the same rhythm I watched all my life, only now from the outside. And strangely, that's enough. I thought that with time my attachment to the building would fade. But it hasn't. It doesn't hold me. It accompanies me. Sometimes I dream of it. Other times I just feel it. When it rains, I remember the sound of water running through the gutters. When the wind blows, I remember the gate. When I see a flickering light somewhere, I feel like climbing a ladder to replace it. The routine, even at a distance, never leaves. It turns into a way of seeing. The other day, Raphael stopped by. He brought a photo of the building lit up at night, after the renovation. We looked at it together in silence. He told me that sometimes when he finishes his shift, he sits in the lobby listening to the sounds of the floors. Said he learned from me how to know when the building is at peace. I told him that's not something you teach. You just feel it. After he left, I stayed holding the photo. In it, the building looked like it was breathing. The lights glowing, reflections on the glass, the damp garden. I hung the picture on my wall between two old frames. Now whenever I pass by it, I feel the same calm as before, the certainty that care continues. Life, I've learned, is made of what remains after we leave. Some things stay in quiet ways, as if they keep existing inside others. The building, Raphael, Miguel, Mrs. Carmem, they're all pieces of the same story, stitched together by small gestures. I don't need a clipboard or a uniform anymore. But I still wake up early, sweep the sidewalk, check the gate, look at the sky. And when the wind blows from the right direction, I swear I can still hear that old sound. The click of the key, the motor starting, the building breathing. I think that's what people mean by legacy. It's not grandeur or fame. It's the echo of what was done with attention, an echo that makes no noise yet remains. Today I woke up before the light. The clock read 5:20, and the house was as silent as ever. I got up slowly, made coffee, and while the water heated, that familiar smell filled the air, the one that always followed me at the start of every shift. The difference now is that there's no building waiting for me. Still, my body moves to the same rhythm. Some habits don't need a purpose to keep existing. I sat on the porch with the warm mug in my hands. The morning air was still cold, the sky just beginning to brighten. From where I sit, I can see the top of the building in the distance. It's always been there, but only after I left did I realize how much it's part of the landscape. The windows reflect the sunrise, and for a moment I catch myself imagining Raphael arriving. unlocking the gate, checking the lights, doing what I did for so many years. I feel a quiet pride. The world keeps working and I'm still present, even without being there. Lately, I've learned to look at the day more slowly. I no longer have to rush to punch in or cross things off a clipboard. Now I notice details that once slipped by. The sound of the wind in the leaves, the distant sweep of a broom, the creak of a gate opening. Living memories, echoes of what once was routine. Sometimes I close my eyes and hear the building breathing, the elevator rising, the pump turning on, footsteps echoing across the floors. It feels like time never broke, only spread out. My body, which once complained from too much movement, now struggles with stillness. I walk around the yard to shake off the stiffness. I care for the plants, clean the pots, water the soil. There's something familiar in that. The same care, just with a different address. What I once did out of duty, I now do out of peace. I've discovered that the act of caring doesn't retire. It just changes form. Sometimes Raphael calls. He says the gate needs adjusting, or that the motor made a strange sound. I listen, smile, and tell him to trust his ear. The building speaks, I repeat, and he laughs on the other end. He understands. And I like knowing that someone learned how to listen to the silence of things. The other day he told me he'd hired a new assistant. Said the boy arrives early, watches everything, doesn't talk much but works with attention. I stayed quiet, remembering myself in the beginning. That's how things continue. One person teaches, another observes, and care passes from hand to hand without needing words. With time, I realized it wasn't the work that stayed with me. It was the way of seeing. Everywhere I go, I notice what needs fixing, what could be better, what asks for attention, not out of obsession, but because I've learned that everything in the world depends on small details. A life does too. If we ignore the little signs, it collapses slowly, like a gate without hinges. Sometimes people ask if I miss it. I say I do, but it's a good kind of missing. Like remembering a song that's already ended, but still plays inside you. The building, the sound of the bucket, the smell of cleaning products, the gate opening, all of it stays with me. I don't need to be there anymore to feel like I belong. Some forms of belonging turn invisible, but they never disappear. The other day, as I was walking down the street, a young man stopped me. He said he used to live in the building when he was a kid, told me he saw me every day tending the garden, and used to think I lived there. We laughed. He said that when he thinks of order and calm, he remembers that place. Said he learned that care is what makes a space feel like home. I didn't know what to say. I just thanked him. That day I went home feeling light. I understood that what I left behind wasn't just a clean building, but a memory of safety. The care we give without saying anything becomes shelter for others, and maybe that's the real meaning of staying. At night, tiredness comes differently. It's not the weight of the body. It's the kind of longing that arrives softly without hurting. I go to bed early, as always, but before sleeping I stare at the ceiling, remembering the reflection of the lamps, the shine of wet floors. I remember the cold mornings, the short conversations, the moments I closed the gate and thought, all good for today. It was just a simple phrase, but now it feels like the summary of an entire life. Time has taught me that constancy is also a form of love, not the love of words or grand gestures, but the kind that repeats quietly, the love of someone who returns every day to the same place and keeps it alive. That's what I feel when I think of the building. It's not nostalgia, it's gratitude. Now the sun rises and the street begins to move, people leaving, cars passing, dogs barking. Life keeps its same rhythm. I sit there watching, the coffee cooling in the mug and my heart at ease. I think that if my story had a sound, it would be the sound of a key turning slowly, the beginning and the end of the same gesture. There's no shift anymore, but the day still exists. And it keeps starting the same way, with the body waking before the hour, the eyes searching for what needs care, the silence reminding me that everything is in order. The building stands there firm, breathing in the heart of the city, and I stay here breathing with it, understanding that work ends but meaning never does. In the end, I see there's no real farewell when what you do is done fully. There's only a continuation at a different pace. The building stands tall and I stand with it, inside it even from the outside, because caring, I've discovered, is the most discreet and lasting way to remain in the world.